Speaker, when I read the Commission's briefing to assist the Audit Committee in its scrutiny of the Commission's budget, I noticed the very first paragraph quoted from Section 40, subsection 4 of the 1998 Act. The Commission shall provide the Assembly or ensure that the Assembly is provided with the property, staff and services required for the Assembly's purposes. I also draw members' attention to paragraph 75, which says the 2025-26 budget for financial assistance to political parties, or FAP, now sits at 1.048 million. It assumed a 3% uplift on the 24-25 rates. I shall remind this House that the 3% uplift did not apply to all parties equally in this House. No, the Commission decided when it came to the Assembly, apparently some staff were more equal than others. Sinn Fein got an additional 90,000 in public money. The DUP got an additional 45,000. The Alliance Party too obtained additional monies. Others, like my own party, well, could just do with what they had for the last 8 years. But it is worse than that. Since that 3% uplift in the budget for the FAP scheme was agreed, we have had the Michael McMonagle scandal. Someone universally acknowledged both within this House and outside it to have been a Sinn Fein press officer, and yet someone who was employed as a constituency office worker by a succession of MLAs, including our First Minister and the member for Northampton of Sinn Fein, Philip McGuigan. On the 23rd of October, I asked the First Minister when she was before the Executive Office Committee how many days a week Michael McMonagle was in her constituency office.
Mr. Gaston,
after all,
Mr. Gaston, could I ask you to return to the substance of the motion, please?
Yes, and I'm coming back to it, Principal.
No, I think you, no. I think you need to return to the substance of the motion, please.
Well, after all, you know, the expenditure associated with this scheme, which we're talking about, you know, Mr. McMonagle was employed by the First Minister from March 2020 to May 2020, as it is detailed, you know, in paragraph 18 of this report, is for expenditure associated with members, not political parties, not press offices. So when at the committee the First Minister wouldn't say how many days a week, I think it's very pertinent that we talk about this today. And sadly, on that day, the chair of the committee, true to form, was anxious to make sure that she avoided that question.
Mr. Gaston, this isn't about the TO committee.
This is about, but we're talking about FAP.
Excuse me, can you take your seat, please? Mr. Gaston, I want to remind you, this is about the Assembly Commission's budget. It's not about the TO committee. It's not about the chair of the committee or anyone else. And if you have any questions regarding those issues, please do so through the normal channels. I'm asking you to resume and to address the substance of the debate, and if not, I'll move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Principal Deputy Speaker, it seems to be any time I try to raise issues related to this, I always seem to be shut down, whether it's committee or now we have it in the chamber before us here today. We are talking about the FAP scheme, which is financial assistance for political parties, and it's talking about members and what they can spend their money on. But it seems to be we don't want to talk about the thorny issues. And I'm mightily disappointed in that. Mightily disappointed that we have an opportunity before us today to air out some of these issues, and it seems to be, well, it's because you're a member of Sinn Fein that you don't seem to want to listen to what I have to say.
Mr. Gaston, take your seat. You're now challenging the chair and the speaker. So
I'll draw my remarks to a close.
I'm moving on, and I would like to remind you again that you had an opportunity on at least 3 occasions to address the motion, which is the Commission's budget, and you've went outside that on at least 3 occasions. So can I call Jerry Carroll, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. There's aspects of this budget which are fine and obviously required even, but there's also other aspects in particular that I want to raise. First of that is MLA's pay. I know it's a bone of contention amongst some people in this House who believe that the £500 increase, which is stated in this budget, is probably not enough, and some, I think, want to go further. I note that Scotland has been mentioned in some of the papers in relation to this budget, but the point that I've raised consistently is that MLA should be on a wage that is reflective of the people that they represent, their constituents. And with this increase in this budget, Deputy Speaker, the wage of an MLA will increase to £53,000. That's of course not to mention the scale of ministers' salary, which is through the roof as well. I think it's adding insult to injury that at a time when teaching unions are balloting their members on a pay deal and potential strike action, when health and social care workers who were promised pay parity, promised money would be restored to them when Stormont was up and running, are still waiting, and NI water workers are still waiting for their money to be processed. I think it's completely unacceptable that politicians are once again prioritised, their pay is prioritised over that of public sector and other workers. There's of course some small improvement for the Assembly Commission staff, 3%. To be precise, but also it's worth mentioning that earlier this year that some senior staff in this building received a 12 to 15% pay increase, and compare that to the 3%. It's totally unfair when we're talking about workers on lower salaries, much more down the pay scale. Deputy Speaker, we also have to ask questions about the organisations that the Assembly Commission pays to do business with. I've raised this before with IS, Information Services, but I don't think we should be doing business with Hewlett Packard, who service the offices of Netanyahu and the Israeli war makers. It also provides technology for Israel's Population and Immigration Authority, which really enforces the apartheid system. There's a worldwide call for BDS towards HP, and this Assembly should heed that call. We also have to make the point about the Assembly's involvement with other further dodgy companies, which doesn't end just with HP. I raised the point about Aramark before, who have hired workers on zero-hour contracts previously. They're involved in the prison industrial complex in America. They're involved in the direct provision system in the south of Ireland as well. Sorry, do you want to make a point? Or?
Jerry, excuse me. Jerry, do you mind taking your seat, please? Yep. No, I'm dealing with this first and then I'll deal with you later. I'm asking members, when others are on their feet, to give them respect and not to be speaking from a statutory position. Excuse me, I'm not finished yet. Mr Gaston, and then I'll take your point of order.
I want to talk about McMonagle, but you're happy to let the member for West Belfast go unchallenged for a long time. I think that's unfair, and it calls into question how you treat me as the Principal Deputy Speaker in this House. Utterly unfair. You don't want to talk about McMonagle, but you let other members talk without intervention.
Okay, so just to respond to your point, I asked for advice if Jerry Carroll's comments were in keeping with the debate, and I was, excuse me, I was informed they were. Now, Mr Gaston, I'm just going to explain this to you. You may not like me, I don't really care, but when I'm in this position, you will respect this chair. So you don't, you're speaking from a statutory position, and I'm asking you to stop. Mr Aiken.
Mr Speaker, and as a point of order and a point of contention, I think I've been in this Assembly long enough to realise when people may be pushing the boundaries, and indeed that is your prerogative as the Chair to do that, particularly about Mr Gaston. But we need to apply it equally, and I cannot see how Mr Carroll's comments about Israel and Hewlett Packard are germane to this particular debate, bearing in mind, Deputy Principal Speaker, and I fully support you in your previous comments about Mr Gaston's views. How can that possibly be equitable?
So, as Deputy Chair and Deputy Speaker, you should know better, but I'll point out again, I did ask for advice if Mr Carroll's comments were in keeping with the debate, because I am trying to be fair to everyone, and I was informed they were. So what I will do, in terms of transparency and fairness, I will make sure and get advice from the Speaker, and I will particularly make sure that you get a copy of it since you're Deputy Speaker. Mr Carroll, I'm going to ask you to return to the substance of the debate.